Hey everyone, it's Zayn, and today I'm going to be bringing you my review of What If It's Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera. I just have to say, I love this book so much. This book made me fall in love with reading again. It got me out of like a huge reading slump, and I'm just so grateful for that. This book follows our main characters, Arthur and Ben. Arthur has moved to New York for the summer to do an internship, whereas Ben has unfortunately just broken up with his long-term boyfriend. The two end up meeting at a post office and they have a little bit of chemistry going on, but unfortunately they didn't get each other's numbers, so the first little bit of the story is just them trying to find each other, and then the next part is them trying to make their relationship work out. So for this review, I think I'm just going to be doing pros, cons, rating, a very quick spoilery section, and then be done. So the main thing that made this book so incredible for me was the character dynamics. While from the cover you may assume that this story is all about Ben and Arthur, if you actually read it, the supporting cast plays such a huge role in the story, and they all can really stand on their own as full and fleshed out characters. There was one character in particular, Dylan, Ben's best friend, who completely stole the show for every scene that he was in. He was just one of those like classic high school characters where they're kind of like annoying, but annoying in like an endearing way. Come to think of it, there were quite a few characters in this book, and even if they didn't get too much screen time, they still had their own distinct personalities and their own story that added to the overall plot. Now, as I mentioned before, all of these characters were flawed in such a perfect way. Now, even Ben, who was one of the main characters in this book, he wasn't super likable. He was kind of mopey, angsty, rude, he was late sometimes, but you could tell that he had a really good heart and that he really cared about the people around him. Now, if you judge Ben just based on his actions, you might assume he's not the nicest, but honestly, I really came to like him throughout the story. I think a big part of that was the inner monologue, getting to see what was inside his head, what he was going through. It kind of not justified his actions, but explained why he was doing what he did. And then Arthur was just so freaking endearing throughout the entire story. He was just someone you wanted to root for constantly. There were a couple scenes where, this is non-spoilery still, he got emotional, and like I personally felt so much for Arthur. I'm like, it's okay, you're fine. I want to like hug this fictional character. But that said, Arthur could be very emotionally reactive at times too, which even for me got a little bit annoying despite being able to relate to that characteristic. While all of these characters were flawed, at the end of the day we are reading about a human experience, so it makes sense that not every action is perfectly justified or perfectly reasoned. Another thing I really enjoyed was the internal monologue. It wasn't one of those situations where it's teenagers talking, but they're talking like fully grown adults, which can be kind of annoying at times. You didn't always agree with what the characters were doing or saying. The writing was also great. Adam Silvera wrote Ben's parts, Becky Albertalli wrote Arthur's parts, and you could definitely tell if you had read some of their previous books who was writing who, and it just worked really well because the two characters contrasted so nicely. Despite being a bit of a longer book, I really didn't want it to end. It was about 430 pages, and when it ended I was upset for a couple of reasons, one of them being that I just didn't want the story ever to end. So that's all I really have to say for my non-spoilery parts. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars for the sole reason that it made me fall in love with reading again. It got me out of my reading slump, and it was just a cute, relatable story. So now I'm going to be jumping into a quick spoilery section. If you don't want to be spoiled, definitely leave now. At the start of this book, I was so frustrated because I just wanted them to meet. I didn't want all of this Craigslist and like missed connections and finding each other on Facebook. Just like meet already. But again, I'm glad that they had that section because it let us see how these characters functioned on their own, and it also let us see that build up to when they finally did meet. It was worth the wait. That said, Ben and Arthur didn't have too much chemistry once they finally met again. Like, the arcade scene was just really kind of cringy. It was kind of sad to see Ben all upset that Arthur didn't excel at all these arcade games when he should kind of know that this is like a musical theater kid. Like, why would he be super into like all these video games? And like, again, not to box him in, but you could just tell that Arthur wasn't really into that. I actually just recently watched a review where someone said, if you have to constantly force it, then it probably isn't meant to be. And that made me really reevaluate everything else. Like, maybe you're right. Like, maybe if you have to like force it in that way. You shouldn't be trying at all. But I still like the fact that they were putting in this effort because they did have that initial spark. So I think I'm completely alone on this, but the fact that Arthur got so upset over Hamilton tickets that were never really his in the first place, I was like, really? Maybe it's because I'm not super into Hamilton, but the fact that Ben took that initiative to try and get tickets for him should have been enough. That said, I understand that you shouldn't, always be late to your date as Ben has been in the past, but I didn't quite understand why Arthur was so upset. I guess it ties into the idea of him being a little bit emotionally reactive, or as many other reviewers have said, he was justifiably angry. Totally up to you guys to decide. Another scene that kind of frustrated me was when Arthur comes to Ben's school and sees Hudson there. I was just like, why did you get so mad over that? And why couldn't you just talk about it like adults? Why did you have to run off in the rain and be all sad about it? I get it. It's a young adult book. These are not adults. These are teenagers. But I honestly felt as though that situation should have been solved with a conversation, not with an external event that happened. For those of you who are here that didn't read the book, basically, Ben's friend Dylan was hospitalized, and Ben texted Arthur when they were fighting saying, hey, I really need someone to talk to. Can you talk to me? I'm really afraid for my friend. And that's why they made up over the situation of Ben being in a summer school class with his ex-boyfriend. In an ideal world, again, they would have just talked about it, worked it out, but it had to be worked out in another way. So whatever, they worked it out and I was happy about that. Now I'm just so torn about the ending. On one hand, I'm like, yeah, I love that, it's realistic and that they broke up because he was only there for a summer internship. Of course, it's not going to last. You're a teenager, it's high school, whatever. On the other hand, I really just wanted them to work out. I didn't want us to think, oh yeah, it could work out. It could, like, it was essentially a cliffhanger. I don't know if there's going to be a sequel, but the way it ended saying, what if we do end up together? I was like, really? Anyways, I don't want this to be too long. I really, really enjoyed this book. If you want a cute summer romance that has characters that are flawed, but also very endearing, I would definitely recommend this book. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon with a new video.